We're live,
Live, gang.
Facebook.
That's right. It's high noon with the 420 comic
This is it.
and Linda
Yes.
Marcus Smith. You know, it's so great that you let me have this time every week because I really need a platform, and I'm not out there in the casinos doing the comedy that I'm normally doing, and I'm not positive that the new normal works for me. So I may be taking different routes. Speakeasies, which in the cannabis world in which I work, there's a lot of speakeasies, a lot of underground events that, are say your name at the door type things. I'll be doing those. And I'll also be doing a lot of backyard parties, living rooms, private events. I'm not interested in having my temperature taken to go tell jokes. So
Not at all.
When phase 3 comes in, I might skulk back in, but I want to put this out there. A guy that's been a comedian for 18 years and with the resume I have, without patting myself on the back, you'd think I'd be more in demand. What's so funny is before this nonsense happened with COVID-19, I had gigs lined up like you wouldn't believe. I was supposed to go to Oklahoma. I was going to Portland to headline Harvey's. I was going to California. I was doing stuff over at the OYO Casino in Rampart. Well, now that things are opening up, I haven't gotten call one. Which goes to show you this is a learning experience for me because, I'm paying attention to who's not paying attention to me.
Yes.
And they often ask me for favors because I'm a conduit to a lot of celebrities. I get calls every single day, Linda. Can you help me reach this person? I have connected people with so many people. My buddy Chris Chiari is my business partner and mentor. He has a new film that just came out today on iTunes. It's a documentary about the struggle of the cannabis movement. It's called Public Enemy Number One. Public Enemy Number One. It's an award-winning documentary. It won the Los Angeles Film Festival, the Los Angeles Documentary Film Festival last year. It won Best Film. And the executive producer is Ice-T. That's right. Ice-T's in the movie. That's right. And you know what? Between myself and another gentleman named Busy B, who's a legend in the hip hop world, we made the connection. So that's what I do. I make connections with people. I connect a celebrity with somebody else. And I was just called this morning to try to contact Cheech Marin. So I don't mind doing that.
I've been in the business not even 6 years, and people all of a sudden want me to hook them up with Sinbad.
Oh yeah, that's how it goes. People ask me, how do you know Willie Nelson? How do you get to, how do you get, they all want to know the secret, and like you even said the other day with Greg Wilson, you have these guests that have done this, that, and the other. And one of them you said was open for Cheech and Chong. Well, I'd remind people, the only people who've ever opened for Cheech and Chong is me and Shelby Chong. No one else has opened for them. No comic can say that. They try to. They tried. I've caught comics go, yeah, I work with Cheech and Chong. I go, really? When did you do that? Well, it was Tommy Chong. I said, so don't say Cheech and Chong.
That's right.
Because you're a liar. And you're lying. And you're doing it.
I hate liars.
Right.
I hate liars.
And see, that's the thing about me is I have lived a phenomenal, fantastic life in 52 years. And I can say that without reservation. I have met people I dreamed of meeting. You know what I mean? I have hung out with unbelievable celebrities, and not just that, I've rubbed shoulders and worked with, people of very high prominence. I used to be the personal assistant to J. Paul Getty's grandson.
Holy crap almighty.
Don Getty was a wonderful man who I was his personal assistant. He called me his rock and roll butler, but his grandfather was J. Paul Getty, the richest man in the world at one point. Right? I mean, remember
God.
how popular you would say J. Paul Getty, and everybody knew who you were talking about, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
So I worked for his grandson, and my mom was a celebrity nanny. My mom worked for Clint Eastwood for 9 years.
Holy Toledo.
My mom worked for Kelly LeBrock and Steven Seagal. She worked for Scott Bakula and people like that. So I'm very comfortable with celebrities, and what's funny is, and I bring this back to you, now you're talking to these legends and people are like, how are you talking to these legends? How is Linda? It's because law of attraction. You're sending out the right vibes and they're catching them. You don't meet your idols by accident. Even if it is, even like, I met Ozzy Osbourne at a gas station in Calabasas.
Wow.
So sometimes you do, but you have to be cognizant. You know what I mean? A lot of times celebrities will walk right by you didn't even know.
That's right. Like in New York, they wear hats and they look down.
LA, I did so many times I've, saw someone walking down the street, pulled over, and there's a celebrity. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing here?
I saw Pamela. I went to get groceries in LA and Pamela Anderson was there. And I was like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. And she goes, oh my God, you're so beautiful. And we hugged.
It's amazing. It's amazing. See, a lot of people wouldn't have the courage to even approach her. You know what I mean? So, but if you're in the moment, these things will happen to you. I used to work for a reality TV show in reality TV company in LA, and it was in West Hollywood. One time I went to go for my lunch break, and I went up to Sunset Boulevard on the classic Sunset Strip area, and I come around a corner and I see a gentleman having his lunch with a long orange beard down to here. I'm like, that is Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top.
Wow.
And I said, Billy, I don't want to interrupt your lunch. I just want to tell you, you're awesome. I love your music. I love your presence. Everything about you is great. And he said, well, thank you. That was very nice of you. What's your name? And I said, I'm Jeff. Really nice to meet you. He said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm on my lunch break. I work over here at a reality TV show. And he said, well, sit down. You're on your lunch break. So I talked with him for about 25 minutes.
How cool is that?
Craziest thing, about, a month and a half later, I'm on La Cienega coming up to Sunset.
Yep.
I'm in the driver's seat, and across from me is a guy in a passenger seat. I look over, it's Billy Gibbons. He says, hey, there's my friend, the comedian. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, that's so cool.
But see, it's because I made the connection. I mean, Chad Smith, the drummer of Red Hot Chili Peppers, he calls me the comedian. If I walk by him, I'll go, there he is. That's my friend, the comedian. So
wow.
So meeting, connecting with celebrities is kind of neat. And but you serve a function with what you're doing. You're interviewing these great comedic talents and bringing them to your audience. So you're doing a phenomenal job. And I think you're only going to attract bigger names. I think your audience is going to really. I have a feeling you're going to outgrow Zoom at some point. Wow,
that would be cool. I'm
think
up for the chat. I never had so much fun in my entire life. Yeah. And I've had a lot of fun.
Well, you have led a rich life. I mean, finances don't mean anything. Your experiences are phenomenal, and getting to know you, I'm discovering so much great things about you. I didn't know you were a bank teller that got held up 4 times. That's incredible.
Yeah. Once by a regular customer of the bank.
Yeah. Did you say to him, really? Come on. I hope you're planning on sharing some of this with me.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
No.
You have no idea.
You were in the military, so you see things from a different perspective than most of us. So
my whole life I've been chasing celebrities. Like my first job was at the Portland airport, and I got the job just so I could run into celebrities.
that is so ironic that you would do that. And of course you ran into dozens of them, you know, big people fly, famous people fly. Um,
Yeah.
um, I
My
would-
favorite celebrity I ever met,
who is
ever,
who's your favorite celebrity?
Vincent Price.
Oh, Vincent Price. He must have been phenomenal. Oh my God. What a legend. What a legend.
He was
Um,
buying 2 packs of certs at the gift shop.
you know, see, even Vincent Price has bad breath, you know. But what a phenomenal, legendary actor. I mean, my favorite celebrity I've ever met, and I've met, oh my gosh, I've met, some of my heroes. But the
Who is your
nicest,
favorite?
the nicest celebrity I ever met to this day is Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker.
Wow.
I was given the pass to Jay and Silent Bob's Strikes Back rap party, and Mark Hamill's in that. He plays Cockknocker in that, and I got to, I was an animator for 18 years, and I used to direct mouth movements on cartoons. That's what I did for X-Men, Batman, My Little Pony, you name it, Strawberry Shortcake. I did dozens and dozens of shows. Well, Mark Hamill is the Joker, and Batman, the animated series, is considered the most famous animated kids show of all time. It is the number one cartoon of all time. And so when I met Mark Hamill, I said, "You don't know this, but we've worked together before." And he said, "Really?" And I've worked with him on several other shows, Fantastic Four and the Hulk and stuff like that. And I said, "When you're the Joker, I direct your mouth movement." And he was like, "Oh my God, I'm blown." He's a famous voice actor, and he was like, "I am blown away. I've never met someone that does what you do. This is phenomenal. You really do that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And first time ever somebody was excited about my job.
Wow.
And he called his wife over and said, "You've got to meet this guy. He directs my mouth when I'm the Joker." And I was like, is he funning me? Is he trying to? But he was sincere. He was very
Wow.
sincere. Unfortunately, I had a photo of him and but that got lost in my shuffle. Nowadays, unless you have a photo, it didn't really happen.
Yeah.
Everybody, think of how many famous people you met that you didn't get a photo with, right?
Totally.
I mean,
I walked into a donut shop in New York City, and Dave Chappelle was there with his wife
yeah,
or girlfriend. It was 2005. And I said, I knew he was not in the mood. You get it. If you've been around enough celebs, you know when they want you to leave them the hell alone.
Oh yeah.
So I went to the opposite end of the donut shop and I said, "Dave," and he turns around and I said, "If I stay the hell way over here, can I get a picture with you?" And he goes,
Well, that's cool.
that was it.
I did a gig with him at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood, and I asked him if he wanted to step out and get high with me, and he goes, "I don't smoke that shit no more, man." And I was like, "Well, wow, thanks, Dave. You're kind of a douche."
Whatever, huh?
So sometimes you meet your favorites, you meet somebody cool and they're weird, but he wasn't very nice to me.
Yeah.
Kevin Hart, I worked with Kevin Hart at the Laugh Factory. He was really nice. He came up to me and told me how much he loved my set.
What? That's so cool.
And I was like, the number one comedian in the world. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh my
But that was
gosh.
before he was that famous. He was still coming on. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I've been in some weird situations in comedy. Like when I was coming up, one time at the Laugh Factory, I was on a bill where every person on the bill was a famous TV star except me. And I went between Ari Spears from Mad TV and the legend Dom Irrera. And I was like, and everyone was like, "How are you on this bill?" Because I did good. If you bombed, they would all know it. They would tell you did not belong here. But the opposite happened. They were like, "How come I've never heard of you before?" So
wow, what a cool story.
yeah, so you gotta, when you get the chance, you work with the best, and And you had Greg Wilson on yesterday, and Greg is one of my favorite comedians, right? You know, I'm the only guy that does a Greg Wilson impression. But he's an excitable guy. He has been a true friend to me for 17 years, and you know, I don't necessarily run in the circles he does in comedy, but he never fails to treat me with respect and encouragement.
That's so great.
Yeah, so I want to give a shout out to Greg. What a phenomenal guy he is. And
thoroughly enjoyed that interview.
I mean, he's one of the best. And I think that you know, he should have his own sitcom. The Greg Wilson Show would be a winner, and not just because I want to play his wacky neighbor, the weed dealer.
He could be the host of a talk show too. He's a talker.
He is. I think it would almost be wasted though, because he is so comedically funny. We really need to see him in, like, you know, a Drew Carey situation where he is the star of the show, you know. And this kind of leads back to what I was going to say. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I am a sitcom fanatic. I spend most of my day, every day, and have been since I was a little kid, watching sitcoms. I love the genre of sitcom. It's a really unique style of programming in that it's 22 minutes long, and in that 22 minutes, someone's world falls apart, but yet it gets all fixed back up in 22 minutes.
That's, you know, so cool, isn't it?
Yeah, and I love, you know, I love American sitcoms. I love British sitcoms. You know, in particular, this is weird, but I collect failed sitcoms.
And this I want to hear about.
Yeah, I used to. They're not so, you know, I've kind of stepped out of it now because there's just so many TV shows that they churn out. So it's hard to determine that. But there's often shows that I will start taping. Well, I did, you know, in the 80s and 90s, I'll start, you know, taping them and thinking they're going to be a failed show, but they end up being a hit. Like, I didn't think King of Queens was going to be as, you know, great as it was. And I remember taping Seinfeld when it first started. It was called the Seinfeld Chronicles. It was not well received. In fact, it was so badly received that people went out and protested to NBC to keep it back on. People, because they were about to pull it. So, you know, and then look at that. It's, you know, the greatest sitcom of all time.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a sitcom about nothing.
Yeah, only to be outdone by Curb Your Enthusiasm, where, you know, I mean, who did, you know, to our amazement, Larry David just kind of stood back there in the background, you know, and then this whole world opened up, and now we see that Larry David is George Costanza. And
wow.
So, but yeah, I mean, I've always loved sitcom. Cheers is one of my favorites of all time. And of course, you know, going way back, the classics. I grew up on I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched and Gilligan's Island and all that stuff, you know. The original Cosby Show, not the Cosby Show, but the Bill Cosby Show. I liked that one when I was younger and stuff. But yeah, see, the world of failed sitcoms is really interesting because so many great things have slipped by people and they never saw it. And if you like sitcoms the way I do, I can turn you on to shows you never heard of. I mean, I just binge watched the George Carlin Show, his sitcom from 1994 on YouTube. A lot of these you can find on YouTube, thankfully. And you can't believe what a gem this show was. Now, it was on for 2 years, so that makes it a failed sitcom. The show has to be on for 4 seasons to be able to get syndication. So if it doesn't make 4 seasons, it's considered a failure.
I'll be darned.
Consider, and that's crazy because Star Trek only had 3 seasons, and that was considered a failure.
Wow.
Believe it or not, yeah. So I'm a TV. You know, not only am I a TV aficionado as far as sitcoms, I was fortunate enough to, you know, like you wanted to meet celebrities at Portland Airport. In my case, I started getting paid in Los Angeles to clap.
Wow.
I went from being an extra on TV shows like 90210 and Weird Science, or movies like Wayne's World 2 or Airheads. I was an extra. And I discovered what's lazier than being an extra? Getting paid to clap. Secret a lot of people don't know is your favorite TV shows are filled with audiences that are paid to clap.
Wow.
Because that's how they get the best results. You know, they make you clap, they make you laugh, and that's your job.
Do you get SAG credits for making that noise?
No, you do not. You are the lowest on the totem pole.
Have you ever been a seat filler?
I have not been a seat filler, but what I did was essentially seat filling, because I did game shows. I did a game show with Dick Clark once. That was amazing. I hear it's Dick Clark talking to us. I did Cedric the Entertainer's TV show when Louis Anderson was directing it. Louis C.K. was directing it. Maz Jabroni was on it. No one had ever heard of Maz Jabroni. Now he's a famous comedian. So I got to see a lot of things happen. And so the neat thing was I went from being an audience clapper, and I did this with my ex-wife at the time, so we doubled our money. We would go do one show, and then they'd say, we'd go sit in the audience for Mad TV, and then they'd say, well, they need you over at Becker, so go over there right now. And then I would go do that. And I started noticing the people on the other side, or the people that are telling me when I can go to the bathroom or not, they get to eat craft services anytime they want. So I became an audience coordinator.
Wow.
I moved on to the stage, and then I started working on Mad TV. I started working on the Wayne Brady Show, the Martin Short Show. Yes.
What?
The Martin Short Show. I adore Martin Short. And what would happen is oftentimes the audience would kill time, so they'd have them do stupid human tricks, like either sing or tell a joke or something. I did an impression of Ed Grimley. Martin Short's Ed Grimley, I'm doomed as doom can be. It's just so great to be here. I did an impression of him, and Martin Short walks in the room and goes, go ahead, keep doing it. I got chills. I'm doing Martin Short's character in front of Martin Short. I was just like, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
That's crazy.
And so as an audience coordinator, I was doing that. A lot of shows. I got to become friends with people at Mad TV. And I got to work with, Key and Peele and Bobby Lee and, all kinds of people. My friend, Michael Hitchcock, who's the executive producer, and Mo Collins, the wonderful Mo Collins. I became friends with her. She's just so phenomenal. So the neat thing was I discovered when I started working in production, I'm part of the crew. You get treated just the same as them. You know what I mean? The ego goes way down. But as an audience coordinator, I was working on Best Damn Sports Show, period, with Tom Arnold and John Sally and these other great, people. The late, great Brody Stevens. Brody, we miss you. Enjoy it. Brody gave me my first break at, oops.
Phone. The phone has a ghost in it. It keeps falling.
Oh, okay. Well, Brody Stevens, I don't know if you remember who Brody was. He's a wonderful person. He gave me my first break as a warm-up guy. He turned to me and said, I've got to do Kilborn. I need a comedian. You're a comedian. Take the mic. And I did warm-up for Best Damn Sports Show, period. And I was like, I could do this. So I did a little bit of warm-up on a few shows. That was exciting. And it was it's not easy work. I'm friends with some of the best warm-up guys in the business. Ron Pearson, the great Ron Pearson, is one of the best in the business. My buddy Gilbert Esquivel, who I met on when I used to do a Star Search with Arsenio. So So the neat thing is yeah, I was so enamored with TV, I had to get involved. And I've never been on a sitcom, but it's one of my dreams. I mean, to this day.
Wow.
I mean, I don't care if I'm just like the wacky neighbor or I just walk in and say one line. I've, I love sitcoms, and
Maybe Greg Wilson will get his show and get you as his wacky neighbor.
I'm hoping so. And if he gets someone else as his wacky neighbor, I'm barging in anyways. But what I was saying is, it's so, the failed sitcom world is so neat. And people don't know that some of your favorite stars had their own shows that failed. People don't remember Bette Midler's show, Bet. People don't remember Dudley Moore had a show called Dudley. Dudley Moore. How does Dudley Moore not have a famous show, right? Dudley Moore? The Gregory Hines show. Gregory Hines.
I remember that.
Wasn't that great? Wasn't that great? Damon Wayans had a show called Damon. Bob Newhart had a show called Bob. Nobody remembers.
Oh, we are.
George Wendt from Cheers had his own show, the George Wendt Show. So, I'm the guy that catches all these things that fall through the cracks and stuff. And lots of shows that are kind of considered failed sitcoms. People discover them later and they become like these gems. Like, for example, Freaks and Geeks. Freaks and Geeks, which starred, Seth Rogen and James Franco and, all these, soon to be celebrities. No one watched it when it came out, but I did. And then now people revere it as this gem, so it's so interesting.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm,
how's your high noon hanging in there? Do you need another, do you need to smoke?
Oh, how funny that you would even say that. That's, to be encouraged to smoke pot is awesome. But yeah, and what's neat is I'm so enamored with sitcoms. I've become friends with sitcom stars, specifically, Robbie Rist, Cousin Oliver from the Brady Bunch, is a friend of mine. Robbie has performed in my show, The Dope Show, the dopest show on earth, 3 times. And I mean, he was the most sought after child actor in Hollywood at that time. I mean, what a phenomenal, and I just was talking to my friend Skippy, Mark Price from Family Ties, the wacky neighbor Skippy. So, and we're blessed to have Marshall Warfield out here. I couldn't believe when I met Marshall. Marshall Warfield came to one of my shows and asked if I was headlining and asked if she could do a set. I'm like, of course you could. You're Marshall Warfield. You're a legend.
Jeez.
I mean, people don't remember Marshall Warfield was not only was she on Empty Nest and Night Court, but she was a member of Richard Pryor's show, The Richard Pryor Show, which only lasted 6 episodes. 6 episodes because it was so controversial.
I'll be darned.
And the neat thing is, Robin Williams was on that show. It was on the Richard Pryor Show. Who else? Tim Reed from WKRP, Venus Flytrap. He was on there. And the neatest part is my mentor, my late great mentor, Vic Dunlop, was also on the show. And so, I've become a real aficionado of sitcoms. And then, I get to meet these people. You were there in Portland when we were there last year in October. One of my greatest experiences of the Portland Comedy Festival is hanging out with Mark Brazil.
Wasn't that cool?
Now, Mark Brazil, fortunately, I caught him before he stopped smoking pot. I got high with him over at the KLOS studios. He's the real Eric Foreman. He is Eric Foreman from that 70s show. He wrote that. That's based on him. It's just astounding.
I totally believe that.
Yeah, and you should see pictures of him when he's a teenager. He looks just like Topher Grace. They look exactly alike. But Mark, see, I'm an aficionado, so I had already known Mark was one of the writers of Third Rock from the Sun. One of the greatest sitcoms ever. I mean, can you believe that they got John Lithgow to lead a sitcom. John Lithgow was one of our greatest actors, and he was in a ridiculous sitcom that was hilarious.
Wow.
You know?
That was really cool meeting him at the festival.
Oh gosh, I've never met John Lithgow. How wonderful! Oh, you mean Mark Brazil?
Yeah, that was so cool.
Mark Brazil.
You know what he said to me when we were there?
What did he say?
He said, "I've been watching you. You're amazing."
That's important. That is important. And that leads me, it's so great to get this response from people. George Lopez, who I've talked about. I met George in 1993 when I was a rock musician, and we became friends. I didn't know George Lopez was going to have the George Lopez show. I didn't know George was going to have his own talk show, Lopez Tonight. To this day, George is a friend and a mentor, and he, I love his work. Here we go again, another guy that's got his own sitcom. I was just like, how amazing is this? Named after him. So
doesn't he need a crazy neighbor?
He did. They had a crazy neighbor. It was his best friend on the show. Yeah, and what's funny too is I've had some friends of mine that are comedians that have said, when I make my show, you're going to be cast in it. So I'm still hoping that some of them get it.
That's cool.
But yeah, so for me, working with comedians is great. But if they've been on a sitcom, if they were a cast member on a sitcom, I'm enamored with them. And especially I become friends. Brian Scalaro is a good friend of mine. Brian Scalaro, you've seen him on dozens and dozens of TV shows. He was on the show with Pamela Anderson called Stacked on Fox. He was the third lead. And so hanging out with people like that, they don't realize what it means to me. To them, that's a job they do. To me, I'm like, this is so cool. I'm hanging out with, somebody that is part of a sitcom, has been part of this wonderful art form. And I think situation comedies are just so neat. They
are. What's your favorite sitcom of your entire life?
I'd have to say it's probably Seinfeld. Seinfeld is just so well written. I can go back and watch it so many times. I can think of episodes and it will make me laugh. The Office is right up there. The Office is a phenomenal show with a phenomenal story arc, and the guests they've had on it are just great. But I'm also a huge fan of the English Office with Ricky Gervais.
I love Ricky Gervais. Ricky
Gervais, in my estimation, is the best comedian alive today.
Ever.
Ricky Gervais is phenomenal. He's got huge cojones. He's not afraid of anything. He is in the genre of George Carlin and Richard Pryor. I would put Ricky Gervais right up there. And
I used to watch him sitting on his steps in his house talking to Molly the cat.
Oh my God! Just
Lolly.
What a great guy. And I love his he has another show called Extras, which was a great show. But I love sitcoms. And the British ones, Faulty Towers was huge when I love that. And see, what I do is I find these gems. A lot of people don't know. Golden Girls is a great show, right? Who doesn't love Golden Girls? But people don't know that it had a spinoff. There's a show called Golden Palace, which stars Cheech Marin and Don Cheadle. Like, people didn't even know that. You can watch that on YouTube, and they're so funny. So while people are looking for new entertainment on Netflix and all that, like, what's the next sitcom? What's the next new show? I'm going back and looking at shows that didn't make it, and I'm loving it. And yeah, I could go on and on. Probably the most famous failed sitcom of all time is a show called Working Stiffs, which was with Michael Keaton and Jim Belushi. And also one of the cast members was Paul Reubens, Pee Wee Herman. And the very first episode was directed by Penny Marshall. So, there's great shows that people just like, what? I never heard of that show.
I didn't know that show existed.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I loved sitcom. I was really into Bosom Buddies and Mork and Mindy. I loved Mork and Mindy. Of course, Happy Days and all those kind of things. And when I got to work with Roseanne, I mean, I couldn't believe it. Roseanne, it's so tragic the way she's treated now, because she was the number one TV star of all time in her era. She was, one of America's favorite TV moms. And so when I got to work with her, I was just like, wow, this is iconic. I mean, you are Roseanne. And she's very nice, very down to earth,
That's so cool.
So I get, like I said, working with comedians is neat, but if you've done a sitcom, you better look out. I'm gonna bring up stuff about your sitcom that you even forgot, because
a lot of
I don't
times,
get necessarily starstruck. I just get really excited.
Yeah. So, well, I'm afraid to ask you, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What did you think of the show Friends from a comedy writing point of view? Not the acting, the comedy writing.
I thought it started off better than it ended.
We're about two broke. Sorry, go ahead.
It was originally called These Friends of Mine. The show was the very first, when they broadcast it, it was called These Friends of Mine. And it was good at first, until you started seeing just how for lack of a better term, incestuous the show became. This is New York City, and they can't date anybody outside of these four walls. What's going on?
Yes.
But see, I pay attention to sitcoms more than other people, and I find the inconsistencies. Here's something very funny that you bring up. Friends. Friends was a show. Friends had Lisa Kudrow, right?
Yeah.
Phoebe. Well, Phoebe had a sister named Ursula that they rarely showed. Ursula was on Mad About You with Paul Reiser and Helen Hunt. Ursula's character, it's Lisa Kudrow playing her twin sister, Ursula. So Lisa Kudrow was on two shows at the same time. Now, the funny thing is, they stuck to that script that's, somehow in the same world of Friends, the Mad About You people exist. Well, there's an episode of Mad About You where Paul has to give up his college apartment, and that college apartment is sublet by Cosmo Kramer from Seinfeld. So Kramer is on Mad About You on an episode, and you're like, whoa, look at this. So Friends, Mad About You, Seinfeld, they all live in the same universe, right? Here's where they make a mistake. An episode of Seinfeld, when George is with Susan, his wife, his fiance that he ends up killing by accident, she yells from the other room, "George, Mad About You's about to start. Hold the press." How could Mad About You be a TV show when Kramer lives in Paul's sublet apartment? The writers forgot that they added that component, but I catch it. So that's a major inconsistency. Just another one on Seinfeld. One episode, Kramer says he only takes baths. He doesn't take showers. Then on another episode, he says, "A bath? Are you kidding me? Laying in a pool of my own stench? I only take showers." So I catch these little inconsistencies because I can tell the writers, I know the show better than the writers do.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So and obviously what you just observed, the level that I like these shows is almost insane. People would go, "What is wrong with you? Do something else with your time." Well, how do you know this stuff that you would be paying attention to stuff like that in a sitcom? But I do. And but there's all kinds of great sitcoms that have just like slipped by people that they've never seen. And I could probably teach a class on sitcoms. And in fact, I took a class once at the Learning Annex, how to break into sitcoms, with Allison LaPlaca, who was a famous sitcom actress. You'd seen her in dozens of stuff. But so I was really into the whole thing, sitcoms, and I sit there and I look for little gems that I missed somehow and watch them. So I recommend to people, instead of watching the same stuff they're churning out now, do yourself a favor, take a time trip and go watch a show that slipped right by you, because they're so funny. So many.
That's really good encouragement, because I never would have thought of watching failed sitcoms that never made it past 4 years on the air. I wouldn't have thought.
And there's, they oftentimes get forgotten. And these celebrities, sometimes I meet a comedian and they can't believe that I am their fan. That Tom Papa had a show called Come to Papa. It failed. It only did like 2 episodes, but John Sally, the basketball legend, was on the show. I'm friends with John Sally. I became friends with John Sally. And I bumped into Tom Papa once and told him how much I love his show. And he goes, "So you're the one who watched it?" And some people get mad, some people will be, I'll mention their show and they'll be like, "You bring up my failure? Why would you do that to me?" And I'm like, I loved it. I thought it was great. But to them, they're still bitter about, that it didn't work out.
Yeah. That's like when I met Santana going to the bathroom one day. I said to him, "I love your shoes, your shoe line." And the look on his face was, "Did you have to bring that up?" But I loved his shoes. They were amazing.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't bring up that he's a plagiarist and steals most of his music from other musicians.
I didn't know about it. I didn't know.
See, you know what? I'm the type of person, I have a lot of, I'm a truther, so I know a lot about people and I look into their past and stuff, but I'm also a very considerate person. I would never, ever say something disparaging to somebody. I would never come up and say, something mean. If I don't have anything nice to say, I don't say anything.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I will sit there and nod my way through somebody that's, like saying something that isn't right. If I have to, I will. There's been times when I'll step to somebody and let them know, but for the most part, if they want to have their opinion, I'll sit there and listen to it, but I got my own opinion. So when do I get to talk?
Right, exactly. And I'm not interested in monologues. I'm interested in conversations,
Thank you.
But I was going to mention, the neat thing is too, the best aspect of failed sitcoms is watching an old show that you didn't see or you slipped by you, and then seeing other celebrities who are now famous when they just did a little tiny part. For example, Golden Girls, Golden Palace, Jack Black is on Golden Palace.
Really?
You're like, what? That's Jack Black, and I was watching the George Carlin show. Drew Carey was on there before he was Drew Carey, and one time I was working at the Improv in Hollywood. I'd probably only been doing comedy 6 years. Drew Carey comes up to me and says, "Hey, you're the Dope Show guy." And I said, "You know who I am?" He goes, "Yeah, you're that weed comic. You're funny. I love your stuff." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Drew Carey just said that to me?"
That's so cool.
And you interviewed the great John Caponera, who people don't realize how great John Caponera is. I watched his failed sitcom, The Good Life, which I highly recommend people go find it on YouTube. The Good Life was phenomenal. John Caponera was hilarious. And Drew Carey was his sidekick on the show before the Drew Carey show. So it's a lot of great things that just get missed. And if you go back and you watch these shows, you'll just be astonished how great they were,
I saw John Caponera at the Laugh Factory and I was dying laughing. And so afterwards I went up just to tell him how much fun it was to listen to him. And he wanted to get on at Harvey's where, like Doug and I see eye to eye. So I told John, like, well, have you talked to Doug and Jeff? And he's like, yeah, but they don't reply. And I said, I'm not leaving this building tonight until they book you. And I stayed there and I
Yeah.
stayed there. I stayed there. They finally booked him. And then I went home.
Yeah.
Well, they called him back and then they booked him later. But I mean, there, I'm, he's just too good not to get booked there.
He is. He's and it's one of those things too that, you know, when you look back on his career, the average person doesn't know some of the stuff he's done and some of the shows he's been on and stuff like that. And but the drag part is for some of these great comedians, they put it out there, they tried, it just didn't work. You know, people don't know there was a show after that 70s show called That 80s Show. There was a show on Fox called That 80s Show.
Who
And
is
that
in that?
Glenn Howerton, the star of a very unknown show called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The star of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Glenn Howerton, you know, is he's Dennis from, you know, the show, the main star. And he was on this show that was very funny, but it bombed. It bombed. And you can watch that on YouTube. Another great show that was sort of popular, but people forget, Unhappily Ever After. Do you happen to remember that show? With that show was like it was sort of like Married with Children, and they had Bobcat Goldthwait as a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Fluffy.
Yeah.
It was so funny. And you know, those kind of, you know, great shows just slip right by. I mean, I could just list dozens and dozens of shows that people didn't see that they could spend the next, you know, couple years catching up on awesome shows that they get. And then you, like I said, you watch these shows and you can't believe the people doing cameos on them. And they're, you know, there's a show called Undeclared on that you could see on YouTube that was on Fox. It completely bombed, and it had Seth Rogen and Jay Baruchel, who are both huge stars now. And that show had you know, guest stars on it like Will Ferrell and you know, Adam Sandler, but no one even remembers it. So, like, you know what I mean? So there's these great pieces of art. I consider them art, just forgotten. Wow. So I consider myself like a TV historian, that I keep that alive. You know, people will come over, like if a friend comes over and they see me watching TV, they'll be like, what the hell is this? And they'll realize I'm watching some show they never heard of.
That's cool.
They'll be like, this is hilarious. How did I not ever see this? And I'm like, you don't pay attention like I do. Margaret Cho had a great show, All American Girl. You know, Margaret Cho is one of my favorite comedians. You know, you never heard of All American Girl. You know, these shows, they just slip right through the cracks.
That's cool that you know about them, and a lot of people don't. I bet you run into very few people that know what you know. Yeah,
it's true. And there's not a lot of people that care.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, what's so interesting, Linda, is I used to collect things. I used to be a collector of different things. I would collect, you know, action figures or toys or different, you know, I still collect comic books, but I used to collect a lot of different things, and I would, you know, keep an eye on their value and stuff. And one day I realized, what do you really collect? What is at the, like, what is the most valuable thing you collect? And I realized it was failed sitcoms. So wow. I have these on DVD, and now thankfully YouTube shows them. And so they bring me a lot of joy. They keep me sane. It's part of how a friend of mine just asked me today, how do I get out of my own headspace? I said, watch a sitcom. Just escape. Just let their problems be the problem and not yours. because it's going to be solved in 22 minutes.
Well, I should probably get going right
Yeah.
now.
But I'm glad. Thank you for letting me dedicate today's show to that. If anything, I wanted people to know that not only that's a big part of who I am, but I hope you people listening or watching wrote down some of the titles, because these are great, great shows. And when we hang out, I'm going to have to show you a few gems.
Okay. Awesome.
Thanks for having me. We'll see you guys next time on High Noon. We'll talk about something else.
Every Tuesday, you guys, at high noon, Jeffrey Peterson, the 420 Comic. Get out and buy some of his merchandise, the420comic.com. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Love you lots.
Love you too.
Bye. It's awesome.
Everybody's talking.